So Chanel first began making costume jewellery in around 1924. And this was still quite early days for what we now term costume jewellery, which is essentially imitation jewellery, or jewellery that uses imitation gems. So rather than your precious stones, your diamonds, it's glass paste or semi-precious stones sometimes, gilt metal as opposed to gold and platinum. This pair of earrings was made by Maison Gripoix, who are a Parisian jewellery makers founded in the 19th century, which Chanel worked with from the mid-1920s onwards. Maison Gripoix's signature technique with Pâte de verre, or glass paste, involves taking molten glass under a flame and directing the glass straight into a metal mount. And you get this wonderful sort of subtly three-dimensional effect, as we can see in the earrings. So they're completely hollow. If we have a look inside, we can see again that although they're rather large, quite big earrings, they're incredibly lightweight. And there's nothing else inside. It's simply the metal frame, the sort of globules of coloured glass. And then of course the clasp, as these were clip-on earrings. With her fashion design, Chanel was very associated with a more simple, clean, pared back look. For her jewellery, it was often quite the opposite. Her jewellery really showed an abundance and a richness. And we can see here with this necklace dating from 1938, which again is a fantastic example of the Gripoix hand-poured Pâte de verre technique. We have this beautiful garland of flowers with each petal individually created with poured glass within a metal frame and then assembled to create this sort of hyper-realistic glass flower necklace. So it also offers this wonderful transparency. And we can see here each individual element is made separately and then constructed together. So we have first layer of beautiful soft red glass petals, a smaller layer of blue, and then these very delicate curved green inner petals surrounding a wonderful spherical soft red bead in the center. at this sort of pendant, the central flower at the bottom would feel rather weighty around your neck. And these are colours, this deep red, this deep green, and this rich blue that Chanel returned to again and again in her jewellery designs. So this is a necklace by Gabrielle Chanel, made by Robert Gousson, who she worked with in the second half of her career when she returned to fashion in 1954. This particular necklace, obviously, it's quite a substantial, weighty chain with these beautiful imitation irregular pearls. It's almost like the surface of the moon, you might think. And they're interspersed, they're separated by these collars of diamante. And then, as I say, this quite heavy, chunky chain that features several different types of link. So we have some with a smooth surface and some with a textured, etched surface. And that's one of those details that perhaps really only the wearer would have appreciated. You have to get up really close to notice. So, of course, Chanel costume jewellery was much more affordable than real fine jewellery of diamond, gold and platinum. But Chanel's jewellery, of course, was still more expensive than your average costume jewellery. And so quite often it's her couture clients buying the jewellery. Or it might be a way for a wider clientele to own a piece of Chanel who might not be able to stretch to a Chanel couture suit. We know the wearer of this particular necklace, however, did wear Chanel garments too. We have some Chanel suits and a Chanel cocktail gown from the 1950s that were donated to the museum's collection, along with these examples of jewellery. And we imagine that they may well have been worn together by the original owner, Anne Gunning. Anne Gunning was a leading fashion model in the 1950s, photographed by many of the top photographers and appearing on the front of magazine covers in France, Britain, and the United States. And this dates from around 1964. It's a very classic Chanel look, and it's the kind of thing that she paired with her Chanel suits, which were, by that point, immensely popular. So this is a very long chain necklace, reminiscent perhaps of some of the strings of pearls that Gabrielle Chanel was so well known for in the 1920s and 30s. But of course here they're interspersed with beautiful rich red glass beads that, again, a real feature of Chanel jewellery at this time, separated by these collars of diamante, this tiny little diamante surrounding each imitation pearl and each glass bead. And this was the kind of thing that Chanel loved to pair with her classic day wear, very much like she did in the 1920s and 30s. So Gabrielle Chanel is particularly associated with pearls and with strings of pearls. And she was really instrumental in popularising multiple strings of imitation pearls. And there's countless photographs of her reclining on her sofa in her latest fashions with rows and rows of string pearls around her, although we don't know if the ones that she was wearing were imitation or in fact real, because she did have quite a fantastic collection of fine jewellery herself. So this brooch is quite typical of the designs that Chanel was producing with Robert Gousson in the 1950s and 60s. And we can see, similar to the one next to it, it has this sort of metal openwork design encrusted with jewels, imitation jewels here. So this beautiful emerald green glass cabochon in the centre, surrounded by 4 sort of softly pyramid-shaped red glass beads, a couple of imitation pearls, and of course diamante. And it's finished off with this really beautiful dangling teardrop pearl. The back also has, of course, a clasp to wear as a brooch, as well as a hook at the top, which was quite common in brooches by Chanel at this period. It's so that you could also wear it on a chain as a pendant, so it's a sort of adaptable piece of costume jewellery. So of course one thing that we notice immediately with this brooch or pendant is that it's quite large. And she enjoyed these slightly more oversized jewellery pieces, really making a feature of the costume jewellery and not seeing them in any way as less than an example of fine jewellery. So with this brooch dating from 1957, again, it's quite large in size, and we've got these really generous, large imitation pearls surrounded by lots of little diamante. Again, it's got this really lovely openwork metal frame studded with the pearls and diamante. And we can sort of see Chanel taking inspiration from Renaissance jewellery. We know she drew on things that she saw in museums at the Louvre in Paris, for instance. And often used those inspirations in her designs. So this piece was featured in American Vogue. They described Chanel's jewellery as big, beautiful bravura jewels. And we can see here Chanel is enjoying adding lots of different elements. So of course we have this very rich blue central glass cabochon surrounded by 2 different sizes of diamante, and then a sort of star motif created with these baguette-shaped diamante, surrounded by a sunburst of glass beads that are each topped with a diamante finial, and then these really beautiful irregular imitation pearls, again each featuring a tiny diamante at the very end. So it's layers and layers of different elements combined together to create a really impactful, hard to miss piece of jewellery.